A dirty kid walked into the most exclusive bank in the city. "I just want to check my balance," he whispered. The millionaire banker burst into laughter, but when the screen lit up, his smile froze forever. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of Manhattan's financial district, casting golden light on a world that Marcus had only ever seen from the outside. At 12 years old, he had learned that there were two types of people in this city: those who belonged in buildings like these, and those who cleaned them after everyone else went home. Today, for the first time in his life, Marcus was about to cross that invisible line. His sneakers, 2 sizes too big and held together with duct tape, squeaked against the marble floor as he pushed through the heavy revolving doors of Blackwell and Associates Private Banking. The blast of air conditioning hit him like a wall, so different from the summer heat outside where he'd spent the last 3 hours working up the courage to enter. The lobby was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Marble columns stretched 30 feet high, supporting a ceiling decorated with what looked like real gold. Crystal chandeliers, each probably worth more than his entire neighborhood, cast a warm glow over leather furniture that seemed too perfect to actually sit on. Everything smelled expensive, a mixture of fresh flowers, polished wood, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Money, maybe. Success. Belonging. Things he'd never known. Marcus clutched the worn envelope in his pocket, feeling the edge of the bank card inside. His fingers were dirty. There hadn't been running water in his building for 3 days, and he was acutely aware of the smudge of dirt on his face that he'd tried and failed to wash off at a public fountain that morning. "May I help you?" The voice came from a woman behind a sleek reception desk. She was looking at him the way people in this part of the city always looked at him, like he was something unpleasant that had accidentally wandered in from the street. Marcus's voice came out as a whisper. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I need to check my balance." The woman's perfectly painted eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm sorry, young man, but this is a private banking institution. Perhaps you're looking for the branch bank down on—" "I have an account here," Marcus interrupted, immediately regretting how desperate he sounded. "I have a card." He pulled out the envelope with trembling hands, extracting the black card that had arrived in his mailbox 6 months ago. He'd been too afraid to use it until now, too afraid that it might be some kind of mistake that would get him in trouble. But yesterday, when Mrs. Chen from the corner store had told him she couldn't give him any more food on credit, he'd realized he had no choice. The receptionist's expression shifted from disdain to confusion as she looked at the card. It was clearly from this bank. The logo matched. But Marcus could see her struggling to understand how a kid who looked like he'd been sleeping under a bridge could possibly have an account at one of the most exclusive banks in New York. "I see," she said slowly, her tone suggesting she saw nothing at all. "Well, you'll need to speak with one of our account managers. If you'll just wait over there." She gestured to a seating area, but Marcus barely heard her. His attention had been captured by the man striding across the lobby like he owned it, which, according to the nameplate on the massive desk he was approaching, he basically did. Richard Blackwell. Even Marcus, who knew nothing about banking, had heard of Richard Blackwell. His face was on billboards across the city, always with that same confident smile that said he'd never known a moment of doubt or hardship in his entire life. At 45, he was considered one of the most successful private bankers in the country, managing portfolios for celebrities, tech moguls, and old money families who'd been rich since before the American Revolution. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's mom used to make in a year. His shoes were so perfectly polished that Marcus could see the chandelier reflected in them. His silver hair was styled in a way that looked casual but clearly wasn't, and his watch, Marcus had seen enough luxury watches in store windows to recognize a Patek Philippe, could have fed every kid in his building for a month. Richard Blackwell was everything Marcus wasn't. Powerful, respected, untouchable. And he was staring directly at Marcus with an expression of amused disgust. "Janet," Richard called to the receptionist, his voice carrying across the lobby with the easy authority of someone who'd never been ignored in his life. "Is there a reason we're allowing street children into the building? I thought we had security for this sort of thing." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Around the lobby, other clients, all dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses, turned to stare. Marcus felt his face burning, a mixture of shame and anger that made his eyes sting. "Sir, the young man claims he has an account." Janet began. An account? Richard's laugh was sharp and cruel. Look at him, Janet. He's got dirt on his face and his clothes look like they came from a dumpster. The only account he's familiar with is probably the one his parents opened at the local liquor store. More laughter rippled through the lobby. A woman in a pearl necklace covered her mouth with a manicured hand, her eyes sparkling with mean delight. A man in a three-piece suit shook his head, muttering something to his companion about the neighborhood going downhill. Marcus wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, push back through those revolving doors and never come back. He'd been stupid to think he could belong here even for 5 minutes. He'd been stupid to think a card in an envelope could change anything about who he was or where he came from. But then he thought about Mrs. Chen's apologetic face. He thought about the eviction notice on his door. He thought about his little sister, Emma, who'd asked him that morning if they'd have dinner tonight, and the way his stomach had twisted when he'd had to tell her he didn't know. He thought about his mother. "I have a card," Marcus said again, louder this time. His voice shook, but he forced himself to step forward, to walk across that perfect marble floor toward Richard Blackwell's desk. "I just want to check my balance." Richard's expression shifted from amused to irritated. Clearly, he'd expected Marcus to run away crying. The fact that this dirty kid was actually approaching him seemed to offend him on a personal level. "Security!" Richard called out, but held up a hand when 2 uniformed guards started moving toward them. A new expression crossed his face. One Marcus couldn't quite read. It looked almost like curiosity. No, not curiosity. Something more predatory. Like a cat that had found a mouse and decided to play with it before the kill. "Actually, wait," Richard said, a slow smile spreading across his face. This could be entertaining. He leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers in front of him. "Come here, boy. Let's see this account of yours." Marcus walked forward on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. He could feel every eye in the lobby watching him, judging him, finding him lacking. His 2 big sneakers seemed impossibly loud against the marble. The envelope in his hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. When he reached Richard's desk, he had to look up to meet the banker's eyes. Richard was still smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who was about to enjoy themselves at someone else's expense. "Let me guess," Richard said loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "You found this card in the trash? Or maybe you stole it from someone's mailbox? That's a federal crime, you know. I could have you arrested right now." "I didn't steal it," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It came to my apartment. My name is on it." "Your name is on it," Richard repeated mockingly. "And what might that name be? Should I be expecting a trust fund baby hiding under all that dirt?" "Marcus," he said. "Marcus Chen." Richard's fingers flew across his keyboard, his expression one of exaggerated patience, like a parent humoring a child's ridiculous story. "Marcus Chen," he repeated. "Well, let's see what we find, shall we? I'm sure this will be fascinating." The typing seemed to go on forever. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Around the lobby, people had stopped even pretending to mind their own business. They were all watching, waiting to see this poor kid get exposed as a thief or a liar or whatever Richard Blackwell decided he was. Marcus's hand went to his pocket, touching the only other thing he always carried, a small, worn photograph of his mother. She was smiling in the picture, back before she got sick, back when she still believed that working 3 jobs might somehow be enough to build a better life for her kids. She'd been wrong about that. But maybe, just maybe, she'd been right about something else. Richard's fingers stopped typing. His eyes locked onto his screen,